let me start by asking you about the story of the day, obviously, on the immigration ruling from the Supreme Court. What did you think of that?
Well, it seemed to me that what I thought was the key part of that a year ago when this got all this national attention was the part the court upheld, which is if you pick someone up for some other violation, it's okay to check and see if they're in the country legally. And that was supposedly very offensive a year ago, but it appears to be what was upheld. The bottom line here is if the federal government was doing its job, the state of Arizona wouldn't have to be concerned about these things at all, and hopefully we can make the right decisions here in the next few weeks and months, and the federal government will start doing its job, which is securing the border, meet the legitimate workforce needs of the country, and then find a way to deal with people who got here without documents or came with documents and then just stayed, even though they wound up being illegal, and that's probably a significant number of illegal people here, or people who came legally and just didn't go back. And we need to enforce the law.
What do you feel about what the president did recently on the executive move on immigration? And here's a question. Yesterday, David Gregory had Marco Rubio on and tried to press him on this question, and even Mitt Romney hasn't really come forward with specifics on would you favor any sort of policy that would not require people who came here illegally to have to go back and be deported? Because the difficulty there is the numbers, right? Millions of people. I think the reality of the situation is it's impossible to do that. On the other hand, you don't want to send the message that amnesty is okay. So it's a tricky situation, isn't it?
Well, the real problem is there are three separate challenges here. One is securing the border. Two is what are the legitimate workforce needs of the country. And three is what do you do with people who came here illegally. And 2 and 3 are not that hard to solve if you've solved one. But until you've solved one, people are just not going to accept whatever your solution is to the other two. So we've got to get back to enforcing the law, securing the border, both at the actual border and at the hiring desk. If you secure the border at the hiring desk, if people can't get a job unless they're in the country legally, most of these people don't come. They don't come, Mark, generally for bad purposes. They come for the reason that people always came to America, which is do something better for their family. And if they can get those jobs, they're going to come. If they can't get the jobs, most of them won't. And then the other border issue is a lot easier because you're looking at a lot fewer people coming across that border. So you have to secure the border first, and there are kind of two borders. One's the actual border that needs to be secured. Two is the hiring desk, and then punish people if they hire people who aren't legally here. But you've got to figure out how to let them tell the difference between who's eligible for work and who's not, and that has to some way include everybody. It can't just include people who don't look like maybe they weren't born in the United States. It has to include everybody.
But the other question would be, I guess, what the president was trying to get to, and I know that there have been discussions about this, different plans from Republicans as well. Do you punish the kids who came here by no choice of their own and are in high school and trying to get into college? What do you do about that?
Well, I think not to avoid that question, but I think the way the president's doing it is more troublesome than the other discussion. I mean, he decides he doesn't like the Defense of Marriage Act, so he says, hey, we're just not going to enforce it. He decides he doesn't like the immigration law, so he says we're not going to enforce it. He has every right not to like the law. He doesn't have any right to decide he's not going to enforce the law. He can do everything in his power to try to get the Congress to change the law and sign the bill that changes it, but the president can't just decide he's not going to enforce the law. So I'm much more concerned about that than which law
it's kind of
he
amazing.
decides he doesn't like.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. All right, hey, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on last week, and I got to focus on this real quick because I know we have limited time. There's this claim that's been made by Senator McCaskill, you've heard about this, about the Senate passing a budget last year. Now, look, she's referring to the Budget Control Act, but I thought it would be interesting to get your take on that claim by Senator McCaskill.
Well, the Senate didn't pass a budget, and the Senate parliamentarian even ruled recently that the Senate didn't pass a budget. This would be like if your family said, okay, we're going to spend $30,000, that's our budget. That's no budget, and everybody knows that. So the Senate hasn't done its job for 3 years. I'm not in the majority, and the majority needs to take responsibility for that. 51 people can pass a budget. There are 54 Democrats in the Senate, and their leader, Harry Reid, has not passed a budget or brought a budget to the floor in 3 years. Nobody thinks the Budget Control Act is a budget, and more importantly, the ultimate referee, the parliamentarian, says it's not a budget, and it's not.
How long can they go on doing that and ignoring the requirement to pass a budget?
Boy, I can't imagine. If my side was in control and we had violated the law for 3 years and not done the initial step it takes to do the rest of our work, I can't imagine how much national press attention there would be on the fact that we were just simply not doing our job. And they're not. And even more amazingly, the Senate leader, Harry Reid, says it would be foolish for us to pass a budget because then we'd have to say what we were for. I mean, this is essentially what he says as the reason not to pass a budget. It would be politically foolish to say what we're for. Well, I do agree with that part, but it's unacceptable, and hopefully the American people won't accept it.
Senator Roy Blunt, one more topic. What's the update? I forgot the news last week. Have you guys wrapped up work on the Farm Bill?
The Senate's voted on a farm bill. It's not the bill that will finally be passed if we can pass a bill, but now the House has the chance to pass a bill. And I think the farm bill has become largely about the school lunch program and other feeding programs, but farm policy does matter. I voted for the farm bill. I think if there's a final farm bill, it will be even better than the one we passed last week, and I look forward to continuing to be part of that debate to have the very best farm bill possible. That this bill saves $23.5 billion over 10 years. Nobody else in the government, no other group, has brought anything to the floor from a committee that says here's how we're going to save our part of this money. $23 billion, even in Washington, is still a lot of money to save, and the Farm Bill would do that.
Senator Blunt, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Great to talk to you. See you soon, buddy.